We're live. All
Excellent.
right. Thanks, Frank. Thank you so much for doing this. This is,
Sure.
I think this is going to be, I don't know. We'll see, but I do know that, podcasting is a big deal and everything and it, ranks high. So hopefully somebody will listen and think, you know what? That fair tax might be a good idea.
Yeah. Well,
We,
I've done some Twitter Spaces. Is that considered a podcast too?
no, because well, maybe. I mean, I know, I'm pretty sure I think there's, certain ones that are live and then certain ones that are recorded ahead of time. I mean, I don't I think our audience will know that this is not live. This is something that we've recorded ahead of time and then published to the internet. So, but this, I think, I mean, when we're done, I think I can kind of put it all over the place. It'll probably be on Twitter. I don't know exactly. I mean, I'm just kind of figuring it out as we go.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Good. Good.
but, the thing is one of the things I did wanna say is to let if anybody else is listening to this, you and me have had such great conversations, and, at the end of the when we hang up the phone, I'm just like, "Man, I wanna share this with the world," so, I guess that's what we're doing.
Yes. Yes. One of
So
the
I
things that
guess yeah,
I wanted to bring up was I guess the title of this podcast is Faith, Business, and Tax, or something like that.
politics,
Faith, Business, and Politics. So
faith,
I
business, and
wanted to
politics.
hopefully bring up one of the things about the fair tax, and I'm not
Yeah,
100% sure that it's still current. Lyndon Baines Johnson, when he was I think a senator, introduced a bill that churches shouldn't talk about politics, and if they did do that, then they might lose their IRS exemption. And
yeah.
are you familiar with that?
Who was the you said Lyndon B. Johnson?
Yeah, I believe it's Lyndon Baines
No,
Johnson.
yeah. Yeah, I'm familiar with it in the standpoint of what I've heard from it is that actually, anytime 1C3s have pushed back on that kind of, if the IRS will send kind of threatening letters or whatnot,
Yes,
and if the 501(c)(3) pushes back,
yes.
the IRS will fold because they don't wanna create case law. Those are the kind of things that I've heard, but have you heard something different?
I have not, but the fact that they're not enforcing it is, it's not really for me. Okay, if the law is there, it just depends on who's in office and if they choose to enforce it.
Yeah.
Yeah, something else that's really disconcerting is that I think it's 503Cs. Is that right? There's churches are 503Cs.
Yeah, I think that's one of the kind of I'm not super familiar with nonprofit, but I think that's one sort of classification.
Okay.
I don't know, I'm sorry, Frank.
Yeah, no worries. I don't know either. I can't remember. But if you go to the website of the Church of Satan, they
Uh-huh.
are in that category, whatever it is, 503C, and that
Wow.
means that they are not paying taxes. And
Mhm.
so this is, I don't know if you would say that the trade-off or the choice that we have to make when we have an income tax, whether you know we're gonna whether this particular organization is gonna be beneficial for society, and therefore we're gonna give them a pass on the taxes. But that's a non-issue under the fair
Uh-huh.
tax.
Right, exactly.
I think that if anybody clicks on the link for this podcast because of the word faith in the title, I think
Mhm.
both of those might be very interesting to them.
Yeah, I agree with you. I wanted to I sent you that list of questions ahead of time, and I don't know if we're gonna get to those or whatever, but one of the ones that I did list first was, I don't know if I ever have actually gotten the full story. And Frank, to be, I've always kind of think it's like you and Marty, because
Yes.
I have these visuals of you guys on college campuses, trying to get the word out about fair tax. But can you kind of, if you've already told me, I'm sorry, but here's a chance to say it in a public forum. How did you first? Was it through Marty, or how did you first get involved with fair? How did you hear about it? Or
So
again, if you've already told me this story, I'm sorry, but it's good that you're repeating it in a public format.
yeah, no worries. So I was actually on a bus, a military bus in Iraq in 2000,
Okay.
2005, I think. And one of the fellows on the
Okay.
bus was reading the fair tax book. So
Really?
yeah, so we were on a base and we were bumping down the road, and I I shifted my seat over to where he was, and I told him I already had a preconceived notion that this must be some liberal BS, right? So I told him, "Well, what are you
Okay.
reading?" And he says, "Well, why don't you read it for yourself?" And so he gives me the
Uh-huh.
book, and I read the book, started reading, and I never put it down. Maybe I put it down, but I finished it
Yeah, yeah,
really
yeah.
very, very quickly.
Really?
Yeah,
Was that person Marty, or who was who I mean, is that person still involved, or do you still know that, or is that person still
that
on
that's 20
who
years ago. His last name was
Yeah.
Taney, and I called him Sergeant Taney. But
Okay.
yeah, but, I have not spoken to him since we came back to the States, and so I don't
Okay.
know. I don't know if he's still involved. That
Wow.
would be a good
I've
question.
never heard that story. I've never you've never that is so cool. I'm so glad I asked that.
Yeah. So
So how
when I
Yeah,
did get back to the States, I actually didn't expect to get back. That's another story. And but I had a bucket list,
yeah.
and one of the things on my bucket list was a website that it was, sort of a blend between YouTube and karaoke, and that website was called
Uh-huh.
Acapellioke. So I needed
Okay.
somebody to do a database for me, and I met a fellow by the name
Uh-huh.
of I searched up, people that were doing what do they call it when you're, a freelance, and he was doing some freelancing.
Uh-huh.
He had his own website. It's called, Silent Auction Pro, and he did very, very well with it, and Jim has passed on by now, but he was our state director for California. He was in our conversation, somehow we got on the topic of the fair tax.
Okay.
So, anyway, I hired him to do this database for me, and the next thing you know, he had me, participating in projects with Californians for the fair tax. Now, up to that point, I had been very, very cautious and careful about doing anything publicly of a political nature. I wanted to
Uh-huh.
keep my head down. I didn't want to get involved. I didn't want to get in trouble. I had heard stories about the IRS retaliating about this or that, and I just didn't want to get involved
Right.
in it, and I didn't want to get my family involved in it. And he told me,
Right.
pardon me, that if you don't get involved, if enough people don't get involved, we're in real trouble. And it made sense to me.
Right.
So I just made the commitment, I'm gonna start to do stuff. Well, we have a Tuesday night, conference call. We've had it for years and years and years, and almost all of our members that have, that have been with us we're all in their 70s and 80s, and they're all gone now except for Marty and me. And Marty
Okay.
and I have tried and tried and tried to get people involved, but and when COVID happened, it shut us down. We couldn't go to the universities
Yeah.
anymore. We could go there, but there's nobody going to classes, so there's no point.
Right. Yeah.
But, we've tried to get people involved again, and I think that the time seems to be changing, and maybe it is our time is coming. There's a lot of people that are interested that were not interested before, and also in this current generation, I mentioned we got started
Uh-huh.
going to universities 20 years ago. And this next generation coming up right now, they seem to be very different from what I
Right.
experienced, and I think from what Marty experienced. Anyway, I hope I didn't beat that to
That
death,
sounds
but yeah.
positive.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah, that sounds really good. So you heard about it from the book in Iraq. That gentleman was a sergeant, and you don't necessarily talk to him anymore. But then you guys had this Tuesday phone conference group that you guys did or whatever, and you and Marty were involved with that in addition with other people, and most of those people have kind of passed on. It's kind of left. How did you so is that how you met Marty? Was on that group?
that's
Or how
right.
did you meet Marty?
Well,
Okay.
Marty was on the
Yeah.
call, and there was an event in Santa Cruz, I think it was Santa Cruz, that Jim Donnell told us about, and he said, "Would anybody be interested in going there and, passing out flyers?" It was not a FairTax event. I don't remember what kind of event it was, but it was something about, fiscal responsibility as far in the government or something like that. I can't remember. And I said, I go.
Yeah.
And then Marty said, well, I'll go too. And so
Yeah.
I drove, Santa Cruz is about an hour from my house, I guess. And Marty was probably about a 45-minute drive. And we went there and we passed stuff out. We got people signing up for putting their name and address and email down on our list. We reached out to them later, and some people got interested, and some others didn't. Another thing that Marty and I used to go to was called the Conservative Forum in Sunnyvale, California, and they have excellent
Uh-huh.
excellent speakers. And in the past.
Okay.
I think Marty has spoken to them. Marty also spoke at
Mhm.
the Republican convention in Sin.
Yeah, he invited me to that one time. I don't think he ended up going, but I know he's gone a couple times for that, hasn't he?
Yes, he has. Yeah.
Yeah,
And he's also gone to
yeah.
CPAC, and he's passed out
Okay.
literature there. He's met Mark Levin. I guess Mark Levin is a fair tax supporter, but not really high profile, but I believe he supports it.
Yeah.
And I think Marty also tried to get into the DNC convention, or at least the state Democratic convention. And I can't remember what it was. I think we got kneecapped. They didn't want us there.
Yeah,
That also happened to us at
yeah.
CPAC, just to be fair. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds par for the course, but, so I wanted to ask, so it sounds like when you first got that book when you were in Iraq, is that when you felt like it first clicked? I mean,
yep.
obviously, you kinda thought it was some sort of propaganda, but it clicked right away for you.
Yep, it clicked right away. It just made
Yeah,
perfect sense. And it didn't answer all my questions because I didn't have access to the follow-up book, Answering the Fair Tax, whatever, I can't remember the title of that book. A lot of things, questions that I had, it didn't seem like the Fair Tax book went into that much detail. And of course, if you make a novel, there's a lot of people that just aren't going to pick it up. So I can see why they
right.
didn't go into as much detail as I eventually learned. But the only way to understand how much good the fair tax will do is to understand just how much bad the income tax, corporate tax, capital gains tax, social security tax, alternative minimum tax, how much bad those taxes do. And it's unbelievable how much bad those taxes do. The amount of hoops that people
Right.
jump through, the strategies that they employ, the whole 401k, 457, Roth IRA, all of those industries all exist pretty much to protect people from the income tax. So
Yeah.
imagine all of the people doing that work on those products that would be able to do something else if we didn't have an income tax. And
Yeah, exactly.
that's
We were kinda
opportunity lost right there.
Yeah. No, I mean, we were really kinda hoodwinked, I mean, we were coming right into World War One. World War, I think, was 1914, and then right at, 1913, the Rockefeller, Jekyll Island, the Federal Reserve. I mean, it's just crazy that, all that kinda just came into place, at the same time, and now something that didn't exist for, hundreds of years in America's history just came into existence. And now everybody, all of our citizens just accept it. It's just like something that, they think has been around for thousands of years. And it's like, you guys, this is barely 100 years old. It's not like it's set in stone here. It was just as easily as it was added, it could be or it should be taken away. And that's why I really kind of jumped onto HR25 and saw that the fair tax movement was important because this is something real. I mean, this isn't like pie in the sky that just, some guys are like, hey, this should go or whatever. This is an actual real bill in Congress, HR25, that can actually pass and get rid of the IRS.
Yes.
So to me, it's like, because anytime, and this kind of goes into, kind of people's nature and I'm sure, the first I heard about it was from my father-in-law, Bob Anthony. He's a radio guy. I actually invited him to be on the podcast, and I think he's going to do it next month.
Mhm.
So we'll see how he weighs in. But he's actually the one that told me about the fair tax, and just like me saying, it just clicked. It was just like, yes.
Yeah.
And, because there's the Steve Forbes flat tax and all that, but really that doesn't, I think this is one that actually makes a lot more sense. And, people are always poking holes and saying, well, there's this problem, that problem. I'm sorry, there's going to be no like perfect solution for this crappy, legislation that we have. But the thing that this does is gets rid of the IRS, which I think should be, the IRS is evil, I think. I know
Yes.
you don't probably wanna say that because this is
No,
I
no,
think it's
I'm
very
glad to say
evil.
it now. Yeah. I've changed a
Yeah,
lot. I'm a lot older now, and a lot of my responsibilities have now been taken care of. So if anything happens to me, it's not that big of a deal. But you're right. They are evil, and they were weaponized against the Tea Party. I can't remember the name of
yeah,
the lady who was running the IRS at the time, but it was absolutely all of and then after the Tea Party, anything with the word conservative, as far as 503Cs, they got scrutiny, extra scrutiny, and
Mhm.
that was effectively how that whole movement, I won't say was shut down, but certainly it was on fire for a while, and then all of a sudden, you know, it just seemed like it took the wind out of our sails for a minute.
And the IRS was potentially or for sure, like, who to blame.
Well, if you ask,
It's not
um, okay, so in
it
the short answer is yes, but
Mhm.
Snopes, if you ask those guys, they'll say, "Oh, no, it happened to the left wing too." Well, no, it didn't.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Snopes is already on record as being way biased to the left. What's the other one? Factchecker.org, whatever it is. And yeah,
Mhm.
if that's somebody's idea of the final word or authority, okay, well, then they say that the IRS wasn't weaponized. But I don't know how anybody could come to that conclusion with what we have learned since then about all of the other
Yeah.
forces of government that were weaponized against Trump the whole conservative movement that's on fire right now.
Yeah. Well, obviously, you and I would be considered the choir. We're preaching to the choir to each other. But the great thing about this is maybe somebody else will listen. So, is there any way,
I could
kind
play
of,
devil's
in
advocate if
yeah,
you want. I'm just kidding. I'm just
no, no, I was gonna say if somebody is listening to this and they've never heard of the fair tax, just pretend Tom is listening to this podcast because they see something about that interests them, something about faith or business or taxes or politics or something. They're like, "Hey, I'm going to click on this and listen to it." And so, but they've never heard of the fair tax. What would you say? What is the fair tax, and why is it better than what we had now? I mean, is that okay to ask you
yeah,
that and
sure, sure.
and give your
My
your
my
elevator
uh
little pitch with it or whatever?
my elevator speech.
Yeah,
The
doesn't
fair
Marty always say that?
Yeah, and he's got a really good elevator
Yeah,
speech. He has
yeah.
written some
Well,
really
I
good
and
papers about,
And
taxation
by
in
the way,
general.
I invited him. He's gonna do this too. He's gonna come on too. He can't do it till next month.
Just okay, so
All right, I think we're
you
back.
asked me, about my FairTax elevator speech, right? So
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I yeah, I tell people that, the fair tax replaces federal income tax, alternative minimum tax, corporate tax, Social Security tax, total of 7 taxes, and I can't remember all of them, with one national sales tax. Actually, sales tax is not entirely accurate because it's a tax on new goods and on services, which is a little bit
Right.
different from a sales tax. And that means that there will be no more federal tax withheld from your paycheck. You'll never have to file another income tax return. You could never be audited by an IRS like agency. So the
Mhm,
onus or responsibility for collecting and reporting and all that falls on to businesses, and
mhm,
so they collect that and they turn it over to, in some cases, if they don't have a sales tax, another nearby state will take responsibility for collecting it. But it's other states earn a small, I don't know what you call it, allowance for the service of
mhm.
collecting it on behalf of the federal government, and they hand it over to the federal government. What
Yeah.
that and everybody, all families that are in the United States legally and want to receive it are reimbursed for all of their federal taxes up to the poverty level. And so most people at this point usually say, well, how does that work? How do you know how everybody's poverty level works? It's actually real simple. It's a very simple formula. What it means is that, if you have an adult in the house and a kid, then they give you X amount. If you have an adult and 2 kids, they give you Y amount. If you have 2 adults and 2 kids, and so on. And we know that every single household is going to spend at least a certain amount of money on the amount of food that you have to eat to stay alive and the shelter.
Mhm.
And that number is identical whether you're a Joe Schmo or Bill Gates. It doesn't matter how much money you have. What matters is that formula for the poverty level. And so
Right.
everybody is reimbursed. So that means that from the very beginning, everybody starts out on an equal footing. And that's
Right.
important. In America,
Yeah.
that's important. We're not supposed to be giving tax advantages to people. And it
Mhm.
shouldn't matter how good your CPA is to, how much taxes you pay. That's just ridiculous. Anyway, okay, so to finish up about the fair tax, if you're very, very frugal, if you're a frugal person and you want to start a business, you might be able to excuse me, you might be able to save up enough money to start your business in 2 or 3 years, as opposed to the income tax. You might have to work 20 years to save up enough money to start, a business, like maybe I don't know, McDonald's franchise or something like that. Yeah. So if you're able to if you can live a very austere lifestyle, you can invest
Uh-huh.
money, you can pay off your loans. If you have student debt, you could pay it off at the fastest rate possible. Because remember, in this current environment, if you get paid $1 and the federal government takes 13 cents or 27 cents or whatever okay, so now that leaves you with what? 83 cents to pay towards your student loan.
Right.
Under the fair tax, if you just make a decision, you know what? I'm not going to eat any more McDonald's. I am not going to eat any more Taco Bell. I am going to eat beans and rice and beans. You might be able to knock out your student loan in a year or 2 years. And
Right.
I see these stories about people that are 60 years old, doctors that are 60 years old and still paying off their school loans.
Yeah.
Marty says it best. The big banks want all of us in debt all the time. They don't want
Right.
us to be self-reliant. That's how they
Debt is slavery.
bingo. And that's how
Yeah.
their shareholders make money. That's how the rich get richer and the poor stay the same or worse. There's just so much good stuff to talk about the fair tax, but that's very important. That's one of
Well,
the Go ahead.
one of the things that anytime I talk to people about it, they're always like, "Well, wait a minute here. We're already getting taxed on our income, and then now you want to add, or I'm sorry, a consumption tax."
Yes.
Uh, but I mean, I think that's one of the things I want to make clear, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that it doesn't, it's not an added tax. I mean, well, it's, yeah. Do you want to? I mean, I could say it in my words, or do you want to say it in your words? I
Right.
mean,
Well, I
that's the
would
that
call it replacement. Something
replacement,
else
right?
yeah, yeah, and there's something else that's very, very important. The cost to society for having this bastardized income tax goes way beyond how much they take out of your paycheck or my paycheck. Um,
Mhm.
corporations don't pay taxes. People pay taxes.
Right.
If you raise the
Right.
tax on a corporation, they just raise the tax on their products, right? And so,
Yeah, it just trickles down. It just,
bingo.
yeah, they're not gonna absorb that. They're just gonna, pass it on to somebody else. That's what
Right.
people don't understand.
Yep.
Most, or a lot of people don't understand that.
Yep. So when you eliminate the income tax and replace it with the fair tax, you remove all of those hidden taxes or embedded taxes.
Mhm.
That's not just going to affect the people that have income. That's going to affect everybody, even the homeless people, because corporations,
Right.
when they get and I'll call it a windfall, right? If you're no longer going to force your employees to pay income tax, you could theoretically lower their income or their wages, or you could keep it the same and pocket the difference. Or you could renegotiate the contracts with the workers. There's a principle here, and let me just go off on a tangent for a moment.
Yeah, of course.
I can't remember who was the president at the time, but the price of oil, because of the breakthroughs in fracking, the price
Uh-huh.
per barrel of oil dropped down to, I think, $10 a barrel.
Uh-huh.
And the price of gasoline fell as well. So why did the price of gasoline fall? There was no law passed. Nobody compelled
Uh-huh.
them to do it. It was the free
Uh-huh.
market competition that forced them to lower their prices. So if the price of their product, the raw materials, the manufacture, all that drops, if they want to try to keep their wholesale price the same, well, good luck. If there's competition,
Yeah.
they might get put out of business. Or
Right.
what probably will end up happening is they're going to end up dropping their prices. So the
Yeah.
savings is eventually going to get passed through to the consumer. And
Right.
when it does, there's going to be more jobs. There's going to be people aren't going to have to waste time doing strategizing about taxes. They're not going to have to do these ridiculous, like Apple Computer. I guess they have their cell phones manufactured in China and then they sell them to a shell company in Ireland, and that shell company marks them up and then sells them for $1,000 in the United States. And meanwhile, that capital is offshore, is kept over there. They can still control it and move it around, but the United States government can't touch it. And that means all that capital, the United States economy is deprived of that capital. And that means that the
Right.
people that do have capital and are willing to lend it out can charge a higher interest rate. So these things, the amount of repercussions from jockeying around trying to get a better tax deal is just so counterproductive and
Right.
really waste resources.
Well, the next question I had, it kinda had to do I'm kinda even not em not embarrassed, but I kinda already know the answer, or maybe I don't, but it's kinda the idea of how to, like, spread the word about the fair tax, or what kind of messaging or outreach to have seen, and what I feel like I don't know what works best. Like, you and me have I mean, I think you and Marty, or you guys have tried a lot more than me. But, to be and maybe I'm answering myself, but I'm hoping this podcast, maybe somebody will listen to it and, wake up. But,
Yeah, yeah,
the
I agree.
question was, what kind of messaging or outreach have you seen work best? And I'm sure you're probably a little discouraged, or maybe you're not. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's
Okay.
hard because I feel like it's such a good message, and it's just I don't understand why everybody else just doesn't just jump on and just like, yes, let's do this, you know?
Yes. So
Anyway.
I think I was led astray. I think all of us in this movement were led astray 20 years ago when the internet started getting real powerful. We were all told,
Hmm.
well, you need to advertise on the internet. You need to, do this on the internet, do that on the internet. And increasingly, I no longer agree. And while
Okay.
I believe there is no wrong answer,
Hmm.
there's no way of knowing the right answer in advance. It can only be known
Hmm.
after the fact, which means we have to
Yeah.
try every single thing. In my opinion, and I hope you'll have Bill Rolliston on. He's just
Yeah.
amazing, amazing guy. But
Yeah.
he goes to meetings, not as much now as when he was heavily involved, but he goes to different
Mhm.
sorts of meetings like the Rotary Club, the Optimists, what's the Elks Lodge, and he asks to go there, and they a lot of times they're glad to have a new speaker, somebody willing to address the
Mhm.
group, some interesting subject
Mhm.
matter, and he meets people and gets them to sign up. And some of the most prolific Fairtex supporters have come from that. And so
A
he's
more
been
personal
very
relationship here. So instead of some sort of, social internet click or whatever, it comes from that, like, that personal relationship you're saying.
bingo, face to face.
Is that yeah,
Yeah.
there you go. Yeah,
And I
okay.
and
That
I'll
makes
even
sense.
go
Yeah. I actually totally I actually really agree with you on that.
yeah. Um, and so just because of the things that are going on in my life right now, I cannot do that. I would like to, but I just got some very, very high priority stuff going, and we'll see how that works out. But I will go even one step further. I think that knocking on doors, however frustrating, is probably the biggest bang for our buck. And
Yeah.
having a door hanger, pardon me, excuse me, and having a being able to put a door hanger with
Uh-huh.
a compelling okay. So I get real estate agents all the time putting postcards or, little handouts on my front doorstep. Well,
Yeah.
those people do it because it works. And
Right.
that is the single most compelling argument I can think of to do this. Now, how do we
Yeah.
craft a message that goes well on a door hanger? That I don't know the answer to. But
Right.
the best way to find out is start trying stuff.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so I have tried to establish alliances with other people that are in the public eye. I helped, this is years ago now, I helped a mayoral candidate by passing stuff
Mhm.
out. He lost the election, but if he had not
Uh-huh.
lost the election, I expect that he might have been helpful for me to get the message into a more public square in my little city. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's another thing is alliances. I have always tried to keep some fair text literature with me so that whenever I
Uh-huh.
uh, see somebody, um, and sometimes you can strike up a conversation. And in my case, a lot of times it ends up with politics and taxation. It's almost universal that people don't like the taxes. I just don't understand why it's been so difficult to get traction on this, except for just
Yeah.
like you said, that inertia, being deliberately discouraged by, well, Nancy Pelosi for one. basically taking all of the inertia out of the movement on the Democratic Party side, deliberately forcing people off of that bill. I think a lot of people that might listen to this don't know that when the bill was first introduced, if you were a Republican and you wanted to co sponsor it, you had to bring a Democrat with you so that the numbers were
Mhm.
equal. It stayed bipartisan. As a matter of fact, there was actually a larger number of Democratic supporters for a while, a short while, in the early days of Bill, and then Nancy Pelosi
I didn't
told
know that.
everybody, yeah, and then Nancy
Hey,
Pelosi
I
told
wanted to
all
touch
the
on something you talked about with Bill. I don't I'm not, I'm not gonna this is his story, not mine, but I'm sure he's told you about his personal story with the government, and I really wanna
wait,
get
wait,
him on here. Yeah. But then when we have Bill on, I think he can, share his personal story, but when he told me about the story, I right away said, "Can I write about that? Can you tell me the story? And then I wanna write a short essay or something." And he kinda told me no. He kinda was like, "Let me think about that." And, so I don't know if he's gonna wanna share it publicly, but, I hope he does because I think it's very powerful, and I'm hoping that he told you about the story, or maybe we're talking about something totally different, I don't know.
no, I
But,
have no doubt.
yeah,
I have no doubt. I know the story, and
yeah,
it's a horrific story. It's horrific,
yeah.
but he
I
has
had no
made
idea. Yeah,
he made lemonade out of lemons.
yeah,
What do you call it? A spiritual man and a
yeah,
Christian. So I think that helped him get through it. But if I could, I
mhm.
would like to talk about a previous state director for the California for the fair tax, and I'll tell
Yep,
you his
this is
first name,
your
but not
really the way I wanna do this, Frank, is I
yeah.
really want this to kinda go whatever direction that you want it to go to. So,
Okay,
I'm happy to ask questions if you want me to help, but really, I mean, this is like your time. So, yeah, take it.
for sure. Okay, so his name is Ken, and I won't say his last name, but Ken was a medical doctor. He had a practice in the San Francisco Bay Area, and he had a tax preparer, a very aggressive tax preparer, do his taxes one year.
Mhm,
And of course, when you have somebody prepare your taxes, you still have to sign it, right? So he
mhm,
signed it, but he looked at what that tax preparer had done and he had a very bad feeling about it. It didn't sit well
okay,
with him.
mm,
Ken is one of the most virtuous men I have ever known in my whole life.
okay,
He is literally, and I'm 64. I'm assuming he's still alive. He would be in his 70s, I think, by now. He was
yeah,
an actual choir boy. He
okay,
actually went to church and sang in the choir, right? And
yeah,
so he really felt bad about this tax return. So the
mhm,
following year, he procrastinated for filing his taxes. And he procrastinated and
alright,
he kept on procrastinating and he just didn't do them. And then the
yeah,
following year, he procrastinated again and just didn't do them. And of course, the weight of this on his shoulder was just making the whole thing worse and worse. Well, finally, the
mhm,
IRS did come after him. And
mhm,
they told him if he would pay $1 million in fines and penalties, that they wouldn't put him in jail or prison. He didn't have
oh my gosh,
$1 million sitting around. Most
mhm,
people don't have $1 million in cash sitting around. Maybe he could have
right,
sold his house. I don't know. But this
yeah,
story took place quite a few years ago. So uh, $1 million was a whole lot less uh, a whole lot more unusual than it is now to have that
right,
kind of money around. So long story short, he went to jail, prison. I think he
okay,
did a year in federal prison, I think at Lompoc, if I recall correctly.
uh-huh,
What he didn't know was that in the state of California, you cannot have a license to practice medicine if you're a felon. So he
oh,
lost his
no,
practice. He lost his practice.
man,
He lost his wife. He lost his marriage
oh my
and
gosh,
he lost his house.
oh my gosh, that's
Yeah,
horrible.
it is horrible.
See, this is the thing, we're not dealing in total theory. I mean, these
It's
are
not
real people.
theoretical. Are you there?
Anyway, what I was saying, Frank, is, this isn't just like some theory. This is like real life, real people, and I think that, it's fun and games when we're talking here On the but, this is actually impacts and, I really feel like at the end of it, what I'm trying to not only better my own life, but my kid's life, who I have, I think I mean, yeah, I wanna help myself, but I wanna yeah, I
Absolutely.
wanna it really yeah.
I did some do you remember when, there's a fellow down in Texas, I think, that flew his airplane into an IRS building?
No.
Yeah, he had a Cessna or something like that, and it was after I think it was after 2011, but maybe not. But anyway, the IRS had been giving him a grief for years, and I think they took his house and some other thing, and he'd had it, and so he got in his plane and he crashed into the actual office of his IRS, whoever the guy was that was messing with them.
Mhm,
And, I believe that was the IRS guy that died in that, and, of course, the guy who was piloting the plane also died in that,
mhm.
and, I thought to myself, "Man, how come we don't hear more stories like this?" Because we know how much damage the IRS does. There's got to be more uh, people that just go crazy about it, right? So
Yeah,
I started doing searching for stories about people that attack the IRS or this or that, and there's actually very, very little written about it. And I started thinking, well, okay, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they don't make people that crazy.
mhm,
But then it occurred to me when you have financial troubles, what do a lot of people do to get money to see if maybe they can't dig themselves out? They tap into their 401k, right?
yeah,
Yeah. So when you tap into your 401k, all that taxes on whatever you take out is due and payable that tax year,
yeah,
unless you take a loan out against it. But if you take an early distribution or whatever they call it, you've got to pay all the tax rates, right? So say you needed $100,000 for your business that's having a hard time.
mhm,
So you would do 100,000, but you're only going to get 75,000 and they're going to keep 25,000 for the IRS. And right, so my point is that these difficulties with the IRS aren't, I don't think, usually going to manifest all by themselves. It's going to be part of a big financial mess that somebody is in
yeah.
because nobody messes with the IRS unless they have to, right? So people that help me out, is it the W-9 that you
Yeah,
file at
you're
work? I
you're
can't
you're a
remember.
W-2 employee, but I think it is a W-9 that you fill out, and somebody's probably gonna hear this, be
Yeah,
like, "These idiots,"
right.
but yeah, you're a W-2 employee, but I think that is the form that you fill out, a W-9.
Yeah. So you go exempt and 0, right? Or whatever it is. So you get your whole paycheck. Well, who does that? And why do they do that? Because they're desperate for money.
Mhm,
And then at the end of the year, now they owe all this money, all these taxes,
mhm,
and their whole world comes crashing down around them.
mhm.
So I did a check for how many people kill themselves as a result of financial problems, and that number is pretty big.
Oh my gosh, I don't even wanna are you gonna say it?
There's no place There there's no place in that report to identify individual creditors, and I don't think the IRS would be considered a creditor, but you know what I mean, right?
Yeah,
They're a party that has a claim to some of your and they can put you in prison, and so I don't know why that particular thing is not addressed anywhere. Nobody has studied it, but I think somebody should.
yeah,
I think it would be a really good study. And by the way, going back to that tax building, I think it was in Dallas, if I recall.
mhm,
I looked at an interview with the widow of both the guy who was flying the plane and the tax agent,
mhm,
and it was really sad because it was just destroyed lives.
yeah,
2 men dead, 2 families crippled. They got this black sheep in the family now. Maybe the grandkids don't wanna talk about it because it's shameful or whatever. It's and all unnecessary,
right,
and all unnecessary. And I wanna go back to something else that you said too,
mhm,
which is very, very interesting. In 1916, I don't know if that was the year that the amendment passed or that was the year the amendment was proposed, but I think it was the year the amendment passed. It was only like, I don't know, in the whole country, there was only 500 people that paid taxes. Yeah. And and think about this. What else was happening around 1914, 1915, 1916?
war,
The whole, well, war, yeah. but the whole communist revolution in Russia.
Mm,
So socialism and socialist ideas were sweeping the world. Our government let us down.
yeah,
And I believe it was Franklin Delano Roosevelt was either about to be president or was already in president. I think he was president in 29, and he did 3 terms, so I can't say exactly, but the fact that he got voted in and the actions that he took at that time, I think it's because everybody was looking at communism and saying, "Hey, this is not so bad."
yeah.
And if you ever get a chance, there's a docudrama called Mr. Jones
I'm gonna write that down,
about,
Mr. Jones.
um yeah, it's about a Welsh journalist
Okay.
who, we actually got an interview with Adolf Hitler and, subsequently went to talk with Stalin. I think it was Stalin. Yeah, it was Stalin. And Stalin was putting out this massive, massive propaganda. And this propaganda was seducing many Americans. It was complete lies, complete fabrication. He was stealing all the grain from the Ukraine and selling it for capital to build his factories. And
Yeah,
there was massive deaths from starvation in the Ukraine. And that whole history leads all the way up to right now, what's happening right now. Um, but our ancestors, my ancestors anyway, they dropped the ball. The
yeah,
price of liberty is eternal vigilance, and they were not vigilant.
yeah,
They didn't stop it, and they could have. It would have been very easy to do when they were trying to get this amendment passed. It would have been much easier to do that than to try to unwind it now.
yeah. Do you know, is that on Netflix or Prime, or you don't know where that Mr. Jones docuseries is, or do you say doc
I just went ahead and bought the disc,
oh,
and
okay.
I'll be glad to lend it to you if you would like to borrow it.
I'll check it out, I'll research it online and okay. Hey, you were mentioning, since this podcast is faith, business, and politics, you were mentioning Bill and his faith.
Yes.
That's something you and I have never really spoken about. And if you want to move on to the next question, I can. But do you want to talk about like your faith or anything, or we can move on to the next question if you want.
Well, I'm glad to talk about it. So I was born and raised Catholic,
Okay.
but my experience in catechism was not good at all.
Okay.
And so I started investigating other religions,
Yeah.
and there's a distinction between religions and faiths and philosophies. And so, something that a lot of people consider a religion, I'm not so sure it is a religion, is Sikhism.
Hmm.
And so, I, I, in the last few years, have been trying to practice Sikhism.
Hmm.
And Sikhism is an Indian philosophy, and I'm sure that some Sikhs, if they hear this, are going to call in and correct me, or at the very least, shake their head. But the underlying philosophy is that there is one God, which is very different from Hinduism, because Hinduism believes that there are multiple gods, and the term for that is ek, and it's not necessarily a god with a head and hands and shoulders and feet. It's more of uh, a consciousness, a cosmic consciousness. And I have been a vegetarian since 1979 or 80, I can't remember.
Hmm.
So that seemed appealing to me, although not all Sikhs are vegetarians.
How do you spell? How do you?
There
Is that?
are
How do you
Sikhs
spell?
that eat meat, Sikh. Yeah.
Okay, I've never. And you said India. You said that's not that's like the country of India. Is that, or you said Indian, or what did you say?
Yeah, India.
Okay. From it stems from country. I've never. I mean, I'm actually super fascinated. I've never heard of this. Are you comfortable sharing more about it, or
Well,
no?
yes, but I'm not an expert in it.
Okay.
I think or they had 9 living
Uh
gurus,
huh.
which translates into teacher. And then the last guru had all of the writings and sayings of all the previous gurus transcribed
Okay.
into a book. And so there are no more living gurus.
Okay.
Uh, and I'm not a young man. It's hard for me to remember some of these
Yeah,
words.
that's okay. Huh. That's so interesting. So they actually have a written text and everything. Do you know what it's do you remember what it's called, or is it something that's
Yeah, it's called, the Granth Guru, I believe. Hold on, let me just
okay,
check. Shri Guru Granth Sahib, I believe is the fourth, the formal title of it.
okay.
And, I have a translation, it's in 4 volumes, it's pretty extensive, but
Wow,
if you have the books, you're expected to treat them as if it was a person.
okay.
You have to show them respect and protect them, and just like, people aren't supposed to desecrate the Bible
Mhm.
or other important documents. And so if you ever go to one of their, uh, I don't even know what to call, I can't remember these Indian words, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
it's okay.
But if you go to
Some
their equivalent of a,
temple or some
worship,
worship area?
yeah, if you go to the worship on at the, I'm sorry,
It's okay.
I'm kidding a little.
Don't worry about it.
Okay, but anyway, if you go there, they're very welcoming.
Mhm.
You take off your shoes when you get there. You have to put on a head covering. One of the central tenets is to prevent tyranny or protect the oppressed with violence if necessary, which is exactly the opposite of Christianity.
Okay.
And as far as I'm concerned, I mean, if you follow Christianity, if you truly, truly follow Jesus' words, there's a good chance that, you could get killed because you're supposed to turn the other cheek and, justice comes from God, not from man, etc., etc.
Mhm.
But Sikhs are actually compelled to carry a weapon at all times. You
Okay.
have to carry a particular type of a knife
To protect yourself.
uh, to protect yourself and protect others.
Okay. Oh,
And
it's like a duty of a Sikh
you're
to
required
not only protect themselves, but also to protect the people that aren't or to protect other people.
exactly.
Huh.
And there's 5 articles of faith that a Sikh has to have on their person.
Okay.
That knife, which is called a kirpan,
Uh-huh.
you're supposed to have that always with you. There's a special kind of a undergarment that, it's basically just, a certain kind of
Yeah.
underpants that you're supposed to wear at all
Uh-huh.
times. You're supposed to wear it's called, kara, which is like a bangle or a bracelet.
Okay.
You've probably seen some Indians wearing that.
Uh-huh. Wow. This is
A small
fascinating.
comb, a small wooden
Uh-huh.
comb, and a turban, and you're always supposed to have your hair covered,
Okay. Wow. I'm gonna
and,
I
you're
got a bunch of homework to do on the internet now. I'm gonna be searching this up like crazy.
yeah, and you're not supposed to cut your hair.
Okay. Like ever?
Yeah, like ever.
Oh my gosh. So
Now,
these
you
people
will
have hair like so they just put it up in the turban then,
yeah,
but their hair is obviously long.
exactly.
Wow. Okay. Wait, I've never, Frank, I've never actually met you. We've always talked. Do you have really long hair?
I'm 64 now, so, as you get older, your hair doesn't get as long, and of course, there's a lot fewer of them, but yeah, it goes back down past my shoulder blades.
Okay. Yeah, every time I get my hair
Yeah,
cut, I say, "Don't touch the top of my hair. I'm trying to save that. Just cut the sides." 'Cause I'm trying to preserve the top still. But wow, this is so I'm gonna be I have never heard of this, and I really thank you for sharing. This is really cool. I'm really
yeah.
happy to,
Well, I think
yeah.
I wanna say it's the world's 5th largest religion,
Really?
and it's growing, yes, and, I don't know if you heard about that Indian truck driver that tried to make a U-turn in Florida, and a family ended up killing him,
Mm,
and being killed by that truck.
no.
Well, that guy's a Sikh,
Okay.
and,
And again, it's
I'm really
SIKH.
no, yes,
Okay.
and it's very, very unfortunate because there's so many good Sikhs, but there's just like every religion, you're gonna have a whole bunch of bad apples. If unless you chose Sikhism, if you were born into it,
Mhm.
that's your society, your culture. Of course, you're gonna wear the kirpan and the kara and all that. So they didn't make a conscious decision to dedicate their life to the religion and to good moral standing.
Mhm.
So if you ever look at like scammer payback
Heard of what?
on YouTube,
No.
scammer payback.
I don't know.
There's these guys that make phone calls that try to
Oh,
get you to give up your bank
yeah,
account
I've
and
heard of that kind
password
of
and all
stuff.
that stuff.
Yes, it's called scammer payback?
Yeah, well, yeah, a lot of times there's video, and when there's video, you'll see a whole bunch of these guys are Sikhs. So
Really?
it's very, very disappointing.
Huh.
Yeah, I would like to see the Sikh community do something about that, but that's in India. That's not over here.
Well, regardless of, where something starts from or anything, I think, we do, us as humans, we're kinda can fall short a lot of times. So it's you want to
Yeah,
judge everybody and say that, oh, you're so much better, but until you really kind of understand where somebody's coming from, it's hard to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. So I try not to ever judge, or I mean, I don't want anybody to scam me, obviously, but I'm not the type of person that say, condemn. I don't like condemn. I mean, I don't want to condemn. So, can we kind of shift
yeah,
gears a little bit? So, and this is something that we have talked about a lot, and maybe, you and I haven't really spoken in a few months. And maybe the answer to this question is I'm not motivated anymore. Is there anything, is it just your own belief in fair tax, or your own, what really keeps you motivated these days? Or are you just, no, I mean, you're willing to do this, so obviously you're somewhat, motivated or whatever, but is there anything that keeps you motivated, or just
sure.
or you wanna address that at all, or
Well, okay, okay. So I'll go on record right now is that I am a Trump supporter and believer.
Uh-huh.
However, the hand that he was dealt, I don't think there's anybody that could get us out of this situation
Yeah.
because of the size of the debt, the national debt,
Mhm.
and the interest on the debt. If so, interest generally is dictated by demand for money.
Mhm.
So if America all of a sudden America starts doing really, really well, demand for money will go up. And that means it'll drive the interest rate on the national, or should drive the interest rate up on the national debt. Well, one time somebody asked Albert Einstein, what's the most powerful force in the universe? And
Mhm.
his response was compound interest. I, I, I don't think I can figure out how we ever get out of this. But I do know that if we're going to get out of it,
Mhm.
it's going to involve reforming our corrupt tax system.
Yeah.
This is the fair tax is the only thing that I have seen by a mile that actually fixes the system.
Yeah.
I don't know how, I know you're younger than me for sure, but I don't know.
I'm 47.
Were you kind of politically 47? Okay. Were you politically aware during the Reagan administration?
No, I was born in '78, so I was young, I wasn't even in, but, I've learned a little bit about what he's done. It
Okay.
seemed like there was a few good things.
Yes. Well, at that time, when he took office from Jimmy Carter, it looked like America was done. We
Okay.
got our butts handed to us in Iran. Everybody was building cars every place except America. It looked like our best days were all behind us.
Alright, we're back, sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries. So I think I was talking about when Reagan took office in 80, and America was, and it looked like our best days were behind us. And
Mhm.
because of his reforms and policies and so on, and it happened at the same time as the personal computer revolution, I think, or not exactly the same time, but within a few years.
Okay.
That technological leap made us, the United States, the epicenter for the entire technology revolution. And so my
Mhm.
point is that any sufficiently advancement in efficiency is indistinguishable from a an industrial revolution. So
Mhm.
even if we didn't have the next breakthrough in supercomputing, even if we didn't have the next breakthrough in space travel, even if we didn't have the next breakthrough in fusion energy, adopting the
Mhm.
fair tax would make the United States someplace that people would want to come to from all over the world. Again, they
Yep.
already do, but for different reasons.
Right.
People want to participate with a country that's a winner, and they want to be in a
Yeah.
place where they know they're safe and where they get to keep the fruits of their labor, or a lot of the fruits of their labor. And so
Mhm.
that is why I'm sticking with this. My opinion, this is
Yeah.
the single most important issue that faces our country, and the single most important bill in the House of Representatives is HR 25 right now.
I agree.
Yeah, and there's not a lot I can do to support my country. I mean, but this is something I can do, and I talk about it. I talk about it until my coworkers became upset with me. I talk about it
Right.
to the point where I could overhear people, muttering about to themselves and to others about the fair tax guy and this and that. It doesn't matter. I
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
stuff it's got to be some people are gonna have more than they can handle, but there's other people that have to hear about it for the very first time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's so funny, Frank, that when I first talked to you about this, you were like, "Oh, I think your confidence in me is too high or something." And I gotta say, I mean, sometimes us as humans don't always see ourselves 100% clear. Some people do, some people don't. But I gotta say, Frank, I'm not sure. I've spoken to, I don't say hundreds, but a lot of people about the fair tax. And, I know you think that Marty is, a better or has clear, but the thing about you, Frank, it's your passion. Like you can hear it comes through, and so anyway, I really think this is so great, and
Thank you.
I'm sure you've been beat up a lot by, being called the fair tax guy and things like that, but I would like to be one person that could encourage you to, keep it up because what you offer is actually unique. It really it means a lot to me because I'm a believer also, but there's not a lot of people that are able to articulate it the way you do. So I just
Oh, well, thank
think
you.
that's amazing. Yeah.
And
I
when
wanted to get to the next question. Huh? Go ahead.
no, I just wanted to say, wait till you hear Marty talk. If he gets rolling,
Yeah.
you won't get
Yeah.
he knows about taxation in different countries and across history. It's amazing,
Right.
the stuff that he talked about, and Bill Rolliston's another one. Brilliant and
Yeah.
passionate too.
No, I've spent hours talking to both of them, Frank.
Yeah.
But the thing about you, it's hard, you don't always fully, you're not able to fully see yourself as other people do. At least the way I see you, Frank, is you just have this raw passion for it. You know what I mean? Like Bill and Marty, they both come across as very, I don't know how you say it, succinct and very, well spoken and yes, but there's a certain passionate
I
or
I think
rawness that
I
you
think I
convey
think
when talking about this
I
that's
think the
very
word
powerful.
I think the word you're looking for is unhinged.
No, that's not, but it's
Okay.
funny you say
Okay,
it.
anyway,
But,
let's go to the
okay,
next question.
so let me yeah, so we kinda talked about what keeps you motivated, that's a great answer, but the one thing I wanted to kinda talk if somebody is listening to this, they might, hopefully, they're like, "Hey, how can we join up?" And, I'm gonna just I'm gonna answer that question if you don't mind. I wanna
Yeah,
hear your answer, but
for sure.
it's the way I wanna say I wanna answer that is how does somebody get involved? When you talk to the core people like Adam or Randy or some of the core people at FairTax, I feel like they kinda say, "Well, donate," or, they kinda have their spiel. So my answer, Frank, is actually just get involved however you can be, because there's a lot of ways to get involved. So, whether it's talking to your coworkers like you did or, you know, write an art, just, how there's a lot of different forms or formats or way that you can get involved. But if you do believe in it, just fair warning, you're going to get beat up a little bit. People are going to say, oh, that's stupid. It's never going
Never
to
happened.
happen. And,
Yeah,
I always say, well, of course it won't happen with an attitude like that.
that's right.
I mean, it used to not exist. And now, I'm sorry, the
Income
income
tax.
tax used to not exist, and then now it does. Therefore, there was at one point it didn't exist. So just like it didn't exist at one point, that can also happen again. I know it's an uphill battle, but anyway, so that's how I would kind of if somebody said, "Well, how can I get involved?" But I definitely want to hear what you have to say about if somebody was like hearing this for the first time or like, "Well, what's my next step? How do I get involved?" How do you answer that?
So if I was talking to somebody in California, I would say go to our website, which is CA number 4 fairtax.org. We have a really good website, and the first page on there, the homepage, Marty actually that's Marty's idea.
Is that
Really
the one
good.
that Sean did?
Yes, yes. Sean put that together for
Yeah,
us,
yeah, okay. Yeah.
and I just love this website. And there's a lot of resources on there, and the frequently asked questions and blog.
So it's CA, the number 4, not spelled out for, the number 4, fairtax.org. Okay. So you would say when you were talking to somebody, kind
Yeah,
of
if
first
they were
step,
from
go to that
California, that's
website,
what I
check
would
it out,
send them
and
to.
yeah,
If they were not from California,
yeah,
I would send them to fairtax.org because there's a good chance they do have a state organization, and the guys at Fairtax, Adam and them, will know who to send them to. Even if there's not a formal organization, there's going to be somebody in that state that needs help and can put them to work.
yeah. Well, of course, anybody can always reach out to me at justinsteubs.com. And I don't know if you have any kind of public thing that you want, but what I'll do, Frank, if you do have anything like that, I'll put that on the, but just so you know, it's going to be something that's public. So I don't want you to get spammed or anything like that. But
Yes.
if you did have anything that, or would you ever want somebody to reach out to you or probably not?
At this moment, I would just have to send them to somebody else because
Right.
I don't have time for
Yeah.
any.
Well, you could send them to me.
Okay. Okay.
So if you go to justinsteves.com or CA, the number 4, fairtax.org, I'm sure they can reach out to somebody there. And, along with reading good information, I'm sure they could probably reach out to somebody. Or if you go on the national one, probably somebody will get back at some point, like Adam, or I don't know who would get, I don't know exactly. Anyway, let's move on. Or is there anything else you want to talk about that?
No, that's good right there, yeah.
Okay. So if there is something, if you could wave your magic wand, and I don't know why we even want to talk about this, but it's fun to, talk about fantasy, I guess. But if you could wave your magic wand
Mhm.
and remove some sort of misconception about fair tax, is there one thing that you would remove that people don't understand it the correct way, or do you want to just move on to a different question?
Yes. The biggest misconception about the fair tax is the tax rate and how it's calculated. So, an income
Okay.
tax is calculated one way, and a sales tax is counted a different way. And one is apples and one is
Uh-huh.
oranges, and you cannot directly compare them. You either have to you have to either change one into an apple or change the other one into orange so that you can compare them.
Uh-huh.
So, when they
Right.
we talked about the prebate, right? That everybody gets reimbursed for some of their taxes, right? Well,
Right.
if I collected $1 in tax from you, but I gave you $1 back, what's your tax rate? 0. Yeah. So this is so hard for people to get their head around. Um,
Uh-huh.
I hope I don't mix up these terms because I'm a little bit tired right now, but the income tax rate is calculated tax inclusive. The sales
Uh-huh.
tax or the consumption tax will be calculated tax exclusive. So in one case, your employer gives you X amount and then they take a percentage of that away for the taxes. As opposed to
Uh-huh.
paying sales tax, you agree on a price with the merchant, you pay that price, and you have to add a little bit more to it to pay the tax. So you can see that they're calculated differently. So
Uh-huh.
when you calculate the fair tax and you tell people that it's a 30% tax or 29 point whatever, it's very misleading. The only way
Uh-huh.
that anybody can hit that number, that tax rate, is to spend $2 million per year on new goods and on services, which means that
Uh-huh.
only a very small number of Americans are ever going to pay that rate.
Right.
I don't make a lot of money, but I crunched the numbers and I will actually be paying less dollars under the fair tax considering my purchases that I make. So I have to be clear that only new products or new goods are taxed. So if you buy a brand new car, you're going to pay that tax. But if you buy a car secondhand, you will not pay that tax. If you
Right.
nothing is taxed twice, it's only taxed one time. If you buy a secondhand
Right.
car and the alternator is no good and you buy a new alternator to put in there, that alternator, you're gonna be taxed on that. So the difference
Uh-huh.
between the income tax and the fair tax is the government takes X amount of dollars out of your paycheck no matter how you live your life. Yeah, you can fill out some paperwork
Uh-huh.
and maybe get some of it back, and
Uh-huh.
you better hope you don't screw it up because the fines and the penalties, if you do screw it up, are horrific. But under the fair tax, you get your whole. When I say you get your whole paycheck, I'm talking about for purposes of federal taxes. If your state, like California,
Right.
is taking out a bunch of taxes, there's nothing that this is going to do for you on that one. But you get your whole paycheck,
Right.
and you choose what you're going to spend it on, if you're going to spend it on. Now, I've known people that in the military that they didn't catch their paycheck for 6 months because in the military, when you're enlisted, you go to the chow hall and you eat there and you go home and sleep in the dormitory. You could theoretically you wouldn't have to spend any money. So, yeah, so the way it's calculated is a little bit tricky, but that's the only thing tricky about it. And as a matter of fact, it's not even tricky. The thing that makes it tricky is we're so
Yeah,
used to being tricked by the income tax. We're used to being okey doked and misled, with promises of tax reform over and over and over again. And it never gets better. It only gets worse.
exactly. So, I guess, let me see if I can try to so basically the misconception that you would want to erase overnight would be it's, maybe the numbers are the same, but the way it's calculated is very different, and it's not apples to apples, it's apples to oranges.
Yes.
And actually, it's a more simple calculation when you do consumption versus income because it's not just a kind of like a one-time calculation. Is
Yes.
that kind of the way you would say it, or a
Yes.
little bit different? Okay, that's what I thought.
Can I add something
Okay,
to that?
well, you can add whatever you want. This is your time, Frank.
Okay. Okay. So there are organizations that you can donate to and you can take a tax write off on your income tax. And
Mhm.
that list has become something of a certificate of authenticity for charitable organizations. For example, if you want to make a donation to one of these organizations, you might check to see if they're actually well, BC or whatever. And if they weren't, and you
Oh
say,
yeah,
oh,
that
you know
was
what?
great.
These guys might not even be legit. Well, that's not right at all. If you have helped out a brother-in-law, a neighbor, a poor guy standing on the street corner, you decided to either give him some cash or give him some food from your Costco shopping trip, you don't get to write that off. And why
Right.
are those any less legitimate than putting money into the collection basket at church?
That's a
Those are
great point.
legitimate. If you have family members in another country, if you send them
Mhm.
a, if you send them a check for $100, that check started out as $130 before
Right.
taxes, but you don't get to write that
Right.
off unless they're your dependent.
Yeah.
And I don't even know
Yeah.
how you would claim a dependent in another country, you know?
Right. Yeah, that's the one when I talk to Adam about this, he talks about the whole, welfare state and the idea before, 1913. I mean, that's what really kind of America was all about, was kinda helping your brother
Yeah.
and helping each other out, and it wasn't until after, you know, federal all this income tax stuff was I think I saw the other day, it's well into the trillions of dollars that the United States government pays into healthcare, welfare, all those kind of things.
Yes.
And it's not like, the money was still there. It's just that it was in the hands of the citizens and that the citizens helped their brother, helped their neighbor,
Yep.
and it wasn't about getting a write off on your tax returns. It
Yeah.
was about, helping. It was this camaraderie that we had in America that I really think has been stolen from us. You know
Yes.
what I mean?
Good way to put it.
So it's sad and it doesn't have to be sad. It doesn't have to be unfortunate. It can be fortunate. We can get rid of this thing and pass HR25 and it's a real thing and I hope it comes back into the spotlight into politics because it would be great for our country and the world, I think,
Yes.
really.
Yes.
It would just be a pause. I didn't mean to cut you off though, Frank, if there was something else you were going to say.
Nope. Ready. If you had more, I'm ready for the next question.
Well, the other stuff was just kinda more about you, like, personally and stuff, like, if there was something surprised about you or, also I think we kinda talked about people that might be good guests. I mean, definitely Bill. I asked Adam, I asked Randy, he wants to maybe do it a little bit later. Steve and I always forget Bennett's first name, but,
Jim Bennett.
they connect yeah, Jim. They connected me with a gentleman by the name of Jade,
Yes.
so I think Jade is gonna be on the do you know Jade?
I do not. I believe I've heard of him, but I've never
Okay.
spoken with him or met him.
All right, we're back. So I think we're about done here, but I did wanna say that, all those guys at FairTax hooked me up with Jade, and I'm pretty excited. He's pretty excited about the podcast about spreading the good news of FairTax, if you want to say that. So, but yeah, I guess he was a partner at one of the large four accounting firms. So that's interesting because a lot of the times I talk to CPAs and they're just directly against this, and I think it's a lot of times because they feel like somehow that's going to affect their career or whatnot. So I'm excited to talk to Jade and see what his perspective is as a CPA.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. That should be interesting.
so you've never heard of him? He was the one. So I talked to Randy about it. Randy said, "Hey, I'm just going through some stuff, right? Or not going through. He's just busy until a little while." So he sent it over to Steve, and to Jim, and then all of them kind of told Jade about it, and then Jade was all. So you've never heard of Jade or anything, or
I've
yeah?
heard the name, but
Okay.
I've never met him.
Yeah.
or heard anything that he's presented, but I have heard the name somewhere. I think maybe from Adam, but I'm not sure.
Okay. And then, yeah, we're gonna have David on, David Kendall. He wrote a book. He's a good proponent for FairTax. There's nobody else that wouldn't be on my radar that would maybe be interested in joining the podcast that we don't know or I mean, that I is there anybody else you could think of, Frank, or or anybody else
Uh,
that's not on my radar?
I really wish we could get Dr. Ken, but I have lost touch with him, and I may try to look him up to see if I can get him, but, his kids moved him to Arizona, and
Okay.
I'm not sure that there's any way to contact him, but he would be a great guest.
Does he have connections with any of the other people that we know in common or no?
He's been out of the mix for quite some time now. The people that I know, Nancy Kesey, John Wesley Nubbles, they have passed on. So I don't know who else he might know,
Yeah.
but I'll do a search for him. I mean, the internet gets stronger every day. Maybe they could find him now.
Yeah. Okay, Frank, I really appreciate your time. I think this has really been great, and I'm just learning. And thanks for being patient with me. And I actually do think this was a really good conversation. And I know all of our conversations are good, but I feel like this one is really critical because, I mean, I don't know if how podcasting is going to work in 100 years from now, but, or, if it even is relevant, maybe it's not going to be, doesn't. But I think this
Yeah.
is cool that, something that we've done together could perhaps, influence the culture or society or world or
Yep.
country or whatever for the
I
better. So I really thank you for doing this.
100% agree. I, I,
Yeah.
I want to read two lines. Do you know of a group called Rush? Have you heard of a group called Rush?
The music group? Yeah.
Okay. There's a song called "The Camera Eye,"
Okay.
and there's a line in that song. It's not about taxes, but I've always found it to be a very compelling line. And
Hmm.
it says, "They seem to be drawn by some force to drag the dream into existence."
Hmm, that's good. Can you just repeat that one more time? I'm sorry. Say it one more time. Do you have it in front of you?
They seem to be drawn by some force to
Okay.
drag the dream into existence.
Oh my gosh, that's us, Frank.
Yep, exactly.
That is that is us. I love that. That's a great way to end it. Yeah, I can't wait for I talked to Marty about this and I hopefully he listens and I think he'll be encouraged. But I'm gonna sign
I'm
off.
sure of it.
I'm gonna click the stop recording button. But thank you so much, Frank, and I'm sure we'll talk to you soon.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you, Justin. Have a great day.
Okay.